How are you, Tommy?
I can't complain. It's a beautiful day here in Los Angeles. The sun is shining, and I was blessed enough to get another opportunity to wake up and attack the world and, go after my hopes and dreams. So it's
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Tommy, for joining me. We're going to dive straight into this. We're here
Wonderful.
today to discuss your journey in the adult film industry, and in particular your recent adventures within the Fans Only documentary, recently come out, Fans Only 2. So tell me, Tommy, a little bit about your journey with Fans Only. Where did that all begin?
Well, the journey with Fans Only started about, I want to say, maybe 2 years. I think we're coming on 2 years. I was at the AVN Expo event out there in Las Vegas that we have annually. And prior to that, I was wanting to do something. I was working with some guys, potentially trying to shoot some footage out at my property in Colorado where I live and reside. And it didn't go as good as I wanted. So there I was a couple of months later at the Vegas convention, and I was just kind of milling around and saying hello to the fans and getting enjoying myself. It's always endearing when the fans, present themselves and tell me how much of a hero I am to them, and it's kind of surreal. Needless to say, there I was standing there, and I happened to end up standing next to Joel Vandermolen. And we kind of rub elbows, and I say, hey, how are you? Are you enjoying the show? And he said, well, strangely enough, I'm kind of here, not by accident, but through, through the suggestion of someone who said, hey, if you're in Vegas and he was doing some work there, maybe you should find your way over to the adult convention. It's a pretty interesting event there, and you never know what you'll find. So next thing you know, I'm standing with him, and I introduce myself, and he introduces himself, and he adds that he's a documentary filmmaker. And I kind of, that light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, well, really? And you got my attention. I said, tell me more. He said, well, I currently have a #1 Amazon documentary on Amazon called Gypsy Billionaire. And I thought, well, that's pretty encouraging to be #1. That's a success, sounds like to me. So we started to talk, and I said that I told him who I was and what I did. And he said, I feel like I recognize you. I said, well, it's quite possible. So I said, how many days are you here in Vegas? This is the first day of the event. It's 2 more days. He said, well, I'm here as long as I want. I'll be here for a fair amount of time. I said, if you're interested, if you want to pal around with me, I can show you around and kind of introduce you to the place, and in some respect get kind of an all access, because I can pretty much go anywhere I want and at the event, and different booths, and see different producers and directors and companies and actresses and whatnot. And he said, wow, it sounds like a pretty good idea. So there we were, milling around, just walking around, and we had some lunch and had some conversation. And as the more and more I discussed and talked to him, and he witnessed, I guess for lack of better words, the reaction the fans had with me being there walking around with him and being stopped every few minutes to get an autograph and to take a photograph. He thought, wow, he said to me, I'm in the presence of a star. And I said, well, I don't consider myself that, but I appreciate the sentiment. So we had lunch and dinner, and we talked, and so by the end, and I even said, look, I got a ticket for you if you want to go to the awards ceremony. That's the big gala event. It's like the Oscars for our industry. And if you want to go, I have a ticket. You're more than happy to. And again, he was staying locally in Vegas at a little hotel there. And so we would at the end of one night, he would go home and do his thing, and then we'd come back and reconvene and spend another day. And so eventually we got to the awards ceremony. We went, and he just had a blast. He basically got to a point where he said, "I think I know what I want to do." I said, "Oh, okay." He says, "I think I want to do something with you as a subject matter in terms of this adult industry, and maybe you could be my liaison between the business and such, and be that conduit to introduce me to that." And I said, "Well, that's fair enough." The event ended. He flew back across the pond over to the UK, and I was, staying in the States, and we would talk on the phone, and I said, "I'm not sure if you're interested in following through." He said, "Yeah, I wanna." I said, "Well, there's a big event coming up in May." January was the AVN Awards, and in May, I told him I was being inducted into the Hall of Fame at the XRCO Awards. There's a fair amount of organizations that cover and chronicle the news and the ongoings of the adult industry, and that's AVN. I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2016 for AVN, and then later this upcoming XRCO, I was due to be inducted into that one. So I said, "If you're interested, fly back to the States. I'll take you to this event, and we can start filming just some B-roll stuff and see what kind of, and we can capture me being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And then the whole industry will be there for the most part, and we can get to talk to as many as possible." So he flew back, we met, and we ended up going to the XRCO event, and we filmed some stuff. And then the following day, we went over to Mel's Diner there on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, and we had some lunch. And he said, "That's it. I know what I want to do. I want to do something about you." And I said, "Well, that's wonderful and all, but," I said, "I would like to share the lens, if you will, and showcase myself and others in the business, because there's quite a lot of others in the business that are pretty amazing people and just talented and smart and successful business people and stuff." And I said, "But you got to promise me one thing. I want to cast a bright, shiny light on the business, a more positive tone, if you will, because more often than not, when they do take the lens cover off and film our industry with documentary in mind, it always takes a 180 and turns it into this dark and kind of negative undertone on how the women are so, those poor women, those poor people, they're all being exploited and all these things and whatnot and all these things, and everybody's on drugs and everybody's doing all these things." And I said, that's not my experience by any stretch.
So what was it about your experience that made you want to take this from a different angle, that made you want to shine the bright light on the adult entertainment industry? Has there been something in your life, in your career, that's gone, "No, this isn't right the way it's being projected at the moment. I want to be part of a different type of conversation"?
Absolutely. For me, the life that I led before I got into the adult industry, in terms of the we'll call it the porn industry, if you will. I hate the term because it sounds, very seedy and whatnot. But the adult industry, I had the pretty dark period of time prior to my industry. So I had some drug addiction. I lost my mother to suicide. I was in a bad place of my own. And when I found the adult industry, the acting and whatnot in front of the camera and stuff, I realized that in order for me to do well at this business, I couldn't be on drugs and carrying on and partying and doing these things. I had to be in tip-top shape as a physical athlete, if you will. So in some capacity, porn got me sober. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, that was a positive thing for me. I thought, wow, you know, everyone says this industry is so negative and bad and all those things, but for me, it the result I've had when I discovered it and got into it was a good thing. I thought, wow. So that was kind of where I said this kind of changed my perception of the business. Said, well, as seedy and as whatever so many think it is, not for me. It was a very positive thing for me. So it changed my perception.
And did you find others in the industry having a similar perception than you, having a similar kind of stance on it, that it wasn't this bad experience, that it wasn't an industry that everyone wanted to be out of, that there was a good side to it?
Well, I did. I met plenty of people who were very business minded, and they conducted and they navigated their trip and their journey through the business as professional as you can be, and as upstanding and all those things as you can be. The truth of the matter is, as long as humans walk the planet, no matter what industry we're talking about, in this case we talk about the adult industry, you're going to have dark side and you're going to have a positive side. It's just the way it is. So with regard to that, I thought, you know, what a good way to finally have an opportunity to cast a more brighter, positive tone and different perception. Try to change that perception that the industry is not full of a bunch of dastardly, underhandedly drug addict whatnots, because it's in the world everywhere you look. If you look for that, you'll find it. You could probably find it in the NFL. You could probably find it in all these other industries. Like I said, as long as humans are part of whatever industry it is, you'll have a negative side and a positive side. So, and I always thought
So
that
how did you
if you
find
look,
it then, Tommy? How did you find that more positive side to the industry? Was it just pure luck? Did you stumble upon that? Did you find good people? Or was there something in yourself that made it come to you?
it was the way I conducted myself that I said that sure, there might be some of this negativity and darkness and whatnot, but not while I'm present, because I'm going to proceed and walk through this industry and through that door with a positive, more uplifting way about myself. So I said, you know, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to that's what I want to perpetuate. I want to perpetuate that there are good people in the world or in the business, and that there can be success stories to the business, and it's not all horror. It's not all terrible stories of sadness and despair and these poor people and whatnot. It's just, and again, you can find that in any industry. So.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that has
I thought it
something
was
to
up to
do?
me. That was the way I was going to do it. So
It was up to you to make a difference for yourself and for the industry. And so you've reached this level now, like you discussed there a moment ago about you've reached a level of fame, you've reached a level of recognition, and you've become quite legendary within the industry. How does that make you feel at this point now? How do you feel about that when, I want to go back to that place where you talked about going to the conventions and being inducted in the Hall of Fame. How do you feel now about that? And how do you feel that positive outlook has contributed to you being in this position?
well, uh, it's pretty surreal, to be honest with you, that people hail and look at me and praise me in such a capacity that I am legendary and you are a star and you are my hero and all those things. Uh, so that's very endearing and I love it, and it's actually a responsibility now for me in some capacity that I have to be an ambassador for the industry because the business deserves that. It's had such a dark shadow cast on it. So I I felt as though it's my maybe I'm not going to do it single handedly, but my efforts will be single handed in the respect that as much as I have to do with whatever it is to say about the business or to act and to conduct myself in that capacity is the way I'm going to do it. So it's surreal when I meet people, and like you said, being a legend and praise, and it's it's been quite the journey, and it's still unbelievable. And again, there's 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 far more distance to go with trying to change the perception and be an ambassador and cast a better, more positive light on the business and say these are just people that at the end of the day we're all on different paths to the same place, and the same place it's for all of us, whether you're a billionaire or a gentleman or someone that's struggling on the street and all in between. Nobody's going to get out of this life alive. We're all going to have the same demise, and we're all going to be dead at some point, 6 feet deep. But knowing that is why, while I'm alive and while I have a voice and while I can change people's perception and have an opinion and whatnot, I want to try to be more uplifting and encouraging just as a human being to others. Just so happens that this is the business that I'm in, and others are. And there's really great people that are in it, and there's great people that are in the world, and tragically there's some terrible people that are in the world, and as like I said, as long as humans walk the earth, we're going to have to deal with those. And I always thought, if you look on the bright side of everything, there's always better. Everything's got a silver lining. There's always the bright side. So why would you want to look at life from a negative lens when you could look at it in a positive lens?
Yeah, that's something that resonates deeply with me, Tommy, is that trying to shift the perspective. I too had a past where I looked on the negative far too much, and the world became very dark for a period of time. But as I changed that perspective to the other way, to the light that we're talking about, as we start to look over there, the world becomes brighter. And yes, there are still elements of darkness there. And I kind of have found this place where I think the world is in some kind of balance that we're trying to shift and juggle with at times. There's a lot of negativity happening and there's a lot of good happening. And we just have to choose which one we're going to personally seek to be part of.
Absolutely. There's one of the freedoms we have as a human being is the choice we make to react to something. We have a choice to react to it one way or another. So that's a freedom. We're not bound by anything to have to react to something bad that happens in a bad way. You can always look at it in some sort of bright side, positive. What was the lesson? What was the message? What was and whatever that is. So
could you take me back to that turning point for you then, Tommy? Well, I say turning point. For me, I know personally there was a moment for me that shifted everything from one perspective to another. And for me, that was, like I say, I went so heavy into the dark side that I had this kind of near-death experience that was what woke me up. What is it that changed things for you?
Well, similar to your story there, I was so heavily into drugs that I was out of control. I was on such a downward spiral that it was only a matter of time that I was going to be dead from overdosing maybe, or ending up in a bad place going to try to seek and find drugs and all those things. So what happened for me was it was one evening where I was so intoxicated by cocaine, if you will, and the effects of that, and this was a number of times, and on this particular time, it just so happened to be the last time, which I was blessed. I was about to off myself, literally. I had a gun that I had acquired over the years from someone who gave me it. It was a little 38, a little chrome 38, a 5. It was a 5-shot, and it had all 5 bullets. And one in one of my, crazy, I'll say drunken or inebriated or whatever those moments, I took this bullet and I carved my name into it. And I thought, if I ever get to the point where I just can't break this cycle and this whatever of this drugs and this habit, I'll just off myself. Mm-hmm. So there I was at this moment in my apartment in Northeast Philadelphia, so high on drugs that my heart wouldn't stop, and I was laying in the bed and I had the gun and I pulled the hammer back and was like, I could stop this right now. And I ended up just kind of laying back in the bed and woke up, if you will, and just there was a chalkboard that I had in my room that I had wrote a little something on there that simply said something like, I'm sorry that it had to be this way, but I couldn't see the light through the darkness that I was experiencing. I wrote it on there, and then the following morning I kind of woke up after blacking out and just realized what I had been through and thought, I can't do that anymore. So I erased the board, I erased the chalkboard, and then I sold the gun to a neighbor, got rid of it, got it out of my possession, and thought, I got to change this trajectory. This is not good for me. So I had, a couple of years before that, I had met a guy from the business. I had a trip that I had taken from Florida to Los Angeles and met this gentleman. He basically gave me his card and said, hey, if you ever want to get into this business, he was a director for a big company called Wicked Pictures. So I had went out to Florida a couple years prior. So I already had this kind of potential avenue to go down to get into that business if I wanted to. So when I finally realized that drugs and that lifestyle wasn't going to be, it was just, I was either going to die from it or get out of it. And I did. And I called that guy up and said, hey, I'm ready to do it. It took me 4 years to get the confidence and courage. And when I finally did it, I realized in order for me to do this job, I have to be an athlete because it's one of the most physical actions you can take and do. I can't show up being drunk or on drugs on set to perform and do the acting and the performance of the sex, if you will. And that was what it was. I realized, wow, maybe this business I could be good at, and that was kind of the turning point for me. Was I didn't pull the trigger.
So it sounds to me a little bit like, Tommy, that you found yourself within the industry, that the industry in some way saved you.
Absolutely.
How does that make you feel now then? How do you feel about that when you reflect on it?
It's pretty unbelievable that, I've had people say such a frowned upon and whatever business saved you. Usually the opposite. Someone gets in, they end up getting into drugs, and they end up taking their lives because of shame and guilt and whatever of those things. And it wasn't that for me. Tragically, the shame and the guilt that comes with the business comes from other people's opinions of it. And the guilt and the pressure that these other people that aren't in the business, who shame the people that are in the business, that's more damaging than the business itself, I think.
Yeah,
and that's why we
affects
see
us in many walks of life, doesn't it? In many
Absolutely.
places, it's something that you spoke a lot about freedom in this conversation so far, and I think that's what keeps us away from freedom, is that shame.
I know,
How have
right?
you managed, how has it been natural for you to stay away from that, or is there something because you had such a dark past that it didn't need to come into this part of your future?
Exactly. I left all that darkness and all that negativity and all that stuff behind me and realized that in order for me that person had to die, so to speak. That old life and energy and all those things metaphorically had to die in order to have a new beginning. Kind of a phoenix from their ashes rises a new person, and that's who I was. You know, we can never shed or get rid of the past because it's what we went through and how we've shapes us. But we can learn from it and make it and have the example to not do that again because we recognize those behaviors. So now, after these many years, 20, 22 years, I find myself grateful and extremely happy because of I managed to, you know, stay alive, if you will, and conduct myself in more of a positive way. And, you know, but it's not over yet, unfortunately. You know, there's still what's next. You know, will I have to bear that shame and guilt from others that have their opinion about the business? Because what if they're the minute you
that was my next question, Tommy. How do you deal, you know, being in the industry, being as, you know, being as celebrated as you are, being as popular as you are, it's going to come your way. You're going to get the attacks. So how do you deal with it when that happens?
Well, I free myself from it because when you worry about what other people think, you are then, I guess, imprisoned by them, if you will. They hold the key to you, if you will, and they kind of you know. So at some point you just got to say, you know, it's freeing to not care what other people think about you because it's not your business, it's theirs. Whatever someone thinks about me is not my business, it's theirs. And a lot of times it's a mirror of themselves. Like if they're happy and proud of successful of what they're doing, why should they care about what anyone else is doing? Like what does that have to do with them? You know? So and it's an interesting thing. I think the relationship we have that we spend the most time with is ourselves. So at the end of the day, when everybody goes home and goes away and you're in the bed and you shut the lights out, even if you're next to a loved one or a spouse or whatever, you're in your own head. That's when it matters. How you think about yourself. And are you at peace with yourself when nobody's around? Or do you struggle in your mind and yourself with some of the things that you may have, I wish I had done that, or you know, self-talk is a very big thing. We all have it. We all have our inner dialogue about how stupid can you be, you know, and we can't talk to ourselves in those ways because our brains don't know the difference whether it's a joke or not or whatever.
Yeah, that's
that
what
we're
I was
talking
just
down
say.
to ourselves.
Often these things that we tell to ourselves are often a story that isn't even true. That is often a story that's completely made up. You know, when we do that thing of shame, that we feel shame, it's often because we've interpreted something that we don't know the full facts to.
Yeah, we suffer more in our minds than we do in reality. And our brains, just out of evolution, are wired to notice what is dangerous or wrong, not what is good and happening and happy. Because one false interpretation of something that's dangerous or you know, life-threatening could be your death. So our brains create this almost kind of like this made-up thing of something that could possibly go wrong, yet it hasn't. But then we start reacting to it as though it could be something that happens, and we already, and our minds is what invented it in the first place.
You
know,
it's a powerful thing, our minds, and so I wonder.
Your mind,
you sound like someone, Tommy, that's on a path of discovery through life, and obviously going through making these documentaries, you're discovering a lot. What was the big takeaway for you by the end of Fans Only 2. What did you most learn about yourself in this process?
That I have potential, whether it's just one person or multiple people, to influence and encourage and inspire, to just get up. You fall down 7 times, you get up 8 and keep going, and just resilience, perseverance, and just, trying to have, you may not know what steps, you might not know what steps to take, but as long as you take the next one, that's the important one. You might not know exactly where am I going. It's just, but you got to take that next step, and that next step, you add them all up, and they end up taking to where that place is. I struggle on a daily basis with worry and concern, and worrying about something is like paying the interest, or the it's like paying the fine on something that you don't have. It's not even, we create this. Like I said, we worry more in our minds than we do in our reality. 90% of the stuff that we think about was never even going to happen. 95.
So when you was making these documentaries, were there any particular worries that came to mind? It sounds to me like you took on a huge amount of responsibility to try and change the perspective. It also must have been quite brave for you to share as deeply as you do within the documentaries. So how did that feel for you as you went through that process, and you've come out of it the other side now?
Well, I wouldn't call it coming out the other side, because we're still kind of in the middle, if you will.
Okay.
Sure, there was some concern and worry. I'm like, here I am, going to go, I guess, into, I don't know what to call battle, or into this area where society and groups of people and religious and whatnot and all those other things you want to put into one, oppose that industry and that business. And now I'm standing up kind of saying, no, that's not entirely true. There are some really great people, and we're all just humans at the end of the day, trying to, like I said, get to the end, which is all the same. Nobody wins life and ends up getting to go on and live forever. At some point, the guy upstairs is gonna call our number, and hopefully it's in a good, I don't want to say good, but a more pleasant way to go. Maybe in your sleep, or certainly don't want it to be some long drawn out battle of disease, or you get held up in an alley behind a restaurant and with your wife, and somebody mugs you and shoots you both. That's terrible. So we're all going to have that, and I think the most important thing to do is just be kind to one another. So that's kind of my goal, and is to defend the business in a sense, and say, look, you all think this is what it is, but this is not. And these are the people who are living it and going through it and doing it. And they're no different than you and I. They cry and they hurt and they bleed and they're happy and they're sad, and nobody's different than anyone else. It's just choices we made. We're not doing anything illegal. People would question, oh, it's hurtful to society and hurtful. I can name many things that are hurtful to society. One of them is alcohol. But yet, it's so readily available to everyone, and it's advertised on commercials, and it's glamorized and all these things. Yet, if you chose to pick any person off the street, or who is in a bad moment of their life, and you broke it down, I bet you alcohol's in there somewhere. But nobody's trying to get rid of alcohol. and say that it's terrible for the world and it's negative and it's got destructive qualities and all those things. We just happen to be an easy target to say, oh, porn is the reason why everything is so horrible in the world and all these things. And it's adult entertainment. It's not made for children. That's why it's called adult entertainment, Which I could never understand is that every person on this planet is driven by an internal instinctual desire, and that's a sexual desire. Of course, some religious groups or whatnot say that, sure, it's only to procreate, it shouldn't be for pleasure, which is like, wait, what? But then that's funny because the dirty little secret is that the creator made it feel good, so you would do it in order to have more people as a result of it. If it felt horrible and nobody wanted to do it, then you wouldn't have a human race, because nobody would, so. But again, that's a whole nother ball of wax there. And we even cover some of the religious groups in the church and whatnot, in Fans Only too. We talk to a bishop, and he says basically that it's not the church's place to judge anyone, So I just could never understand, what makes the interaction between a man and a woman who are consenting and decided to have sexual, activity with each other. What makes that go from innocent and good to now this other version of these two people who have consented to just do it as a form of entertainment and be captured on a camera? Is that when that's when it's bad, because it's not in a marital sense? You're not premarital. You can't have premarital. I don't know.
So what about the argument for there is a thing with the younger male generation at the moment that are feeling very disenfranchised with the world, feeling very angry against the world. And there is an argument that boys and men in particular sometimes look at porn and get a obscure view of the world. Do you think that that's true at all? Do you think that there is an image that's being portrayed through pornography that isn't correct, that people are taking as reality?
Well, one could say that how do I explain? It's a form of entertainment. Okay. It's not sex education. It's sex entertainment, right? Mm-hmm. Much like in the first episode, Holly Randall mentioned that you don't learn how to drive by watching the Fast and the Furious movie, because that's a similar comparison. So as a young man, you shouldn't. They may say, oh, well, there's no other way for them to learn. Well, that's a problem then. Maybe there is sex education in school, because nobody talks about it. There is no, when I was in high school, sex education was very scientific, and okay, the woman and the penis and the uterus and the egg and the sperm and all those things. Great. That's the biology of it and of how it works. But, there's no conversations about it because it's so taboo, or it's so frowned upon, so it's up to that. Tragically, it's up to the younger generation in some capacity to almost kind of on their own self-discovery learn how to do it, because they're not having that conversation with their parents maybe, or they're not having that with, I don't recall having it with my parents.
So
because everyone's so scared. Oh my God, how are we going to talk? And how are we going to approach this conversation about sex and the birds and the bees? The stork just shows up and leaves a baby on the porch. Who's telling people that?
How do we start that conversation then that's not so black and white as science that we get at school, and something that's going more into that we have sex for enjoyment?
Well, maybe you start as a parent. Unfortunately, I'm not a parent,
Mm-hmm.
but a parent could say, hey, little Johnny, or hey, little Mary, or whoever, you're getting to the point in your age where you might actually feel some desires. You know, your body is comprised of these parts. These are and during this age, you're going to come into puberty, adolescence, and all those things. And you're going to look at girls, and girls are going to look at guys, have these thoughts and things. And they're not bad. You know, they make it where it's bad. Like, these are thoughts of sin and lust, and these are bad. And, you know, why would you do that? You know, it's like you're programming them from the beginning that this is some horrific thing, and this beautiful, this beautiful moment between two people, whether they're in love or not.
In our desperate need to control, I think society goes to fear first. We go to fear.
Absolutely, and we're certainly not any. It's certainly not new to us to see fear as a way to encourage people to not do something. You scare them into not doing that.
So, and we can see that it's not working, driving fear in that way. That you're right. That there is some conversation that needs to open up on a different level, rather than fear and shame.
Exactly. And then you say to little Johnny or Mary, or, you know, you're getting older and whatnot stuff. So you might have these desires and urges and whatnot. And if you cater to them, and then you follow these urges, this is what could happen. You could get someone pregnant, and then you have now you have the responsibility of, you know, doing it at an early age kind of presents a bit of a disruption in your life, because now you have to put aside your life to make room for this child that's going to come into your life, and to take care of that. So maybe it's not a good thing to do that unprotected. So you want to have protected sex, you want to have contraceptive, you want to have birth control, because these are the things that could take place. These are some of the things that could be a result of that. But you don't just say, whatever you do, don't go having sex with anybody, because your head's going to fall off, or you're going to go blind if you play with yourself, or you're going to,
Yeah.
Nobody's having conversation about sex, and especially when it's time to actually have sex. You do it. You talk about it right at that moment, right there. The conversation should be an open thing. That, again, it shouldn't be so. Parents, they probably go, oh my God, what am I going to do? How do I talk about this thing that is going to take place here between my son or his friend, or my daughter and her boyfriend, or those things,
I guess the fear is also on the side of those going into the conversation as well. Maybe a lot of the time is the fear of the unknown. Maybe this is on an educational level, that we need to bring the adult entertainment industry into education.
It's quite possible. Maybe you start out and you say, hey son, you're 10 years old, 11, 12, whatever. I see, you're having some physiological changes and whatnot, right? How do you look at girls? Do you desire them, or you see them, and he could say, oh, I just don't want to, I don't care for them. I want to go and play my Nintendo. That's possible too. I think they said statistically the younger generation isn't having sex.
And do we know why that is? Is that because of distractions? Is that because of...
It could be fear, distraction, those things. Maybe it's by design, because there's some conversations about the population being too many people on the planet. So in order for us to depopulate the planet, in order to have more resources for everyone, whether that's true or not, Who knows, right? It's all these conspiracy theories about this or that. Why are they? Why is that happening? Testosterone levels are down like 50% from years ago. The likelihood of two male and female, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, even getting into a relationship, maybe that's fallen off the charts. Maybe that's not as popular anymore. Maybe that's not. So there's a lot to take into consideration. I mean, from a professional standpoint and like a clinical or whatnot, you got you got somebody who studies human sexuality, right? There's that, right? So when you talk about human sexuality and those things, and because there are very scientific and approaches and ways to observe those things. So
there is a big shift and a change happening in the world at the moment, all over, in lots of different areas of politics. And that brings me on to a big change that we've had in the United Kingdom, is that we've had here recently this year a ban on social media, not social media, sorry, on accessing adult websites for under 18s, to the point that adults can't access the porn sites now unless you provide ID. How do you feel about that? And do you think that helps in any way? Do you think that does actually protect the younger generation, or do you think there's something potentially else going on there? Because like you mentioned earlier, the conspiracy theorists, there's a lot of conspiracy out there that, hey, this is a way to grab everyone's ID and also hold a level of shame over them.
Yeah, sure, that's possible. It's entirely possible. Control is the biggest thing that anyone in power wants. They want to control society and have more of a way to govern them and see what they're doing and what they're spending and what they're watching and what they're doing. And that's where we're headed now anyway. Naturally, I think there's digital IDs. We saw something took place in the last 5 years when this pandemic struck, and we saw how the governing bodies acted and tried to mandate all these other things coincide with that particular event, and not everybody was happy about that. So if I had a choice and I had children and they could somehow stumble upon a few items by just naturally being in the house and rooting through their parents' or their drawers or something, and I had 5 items or a few items that they could find, what would I rather them find? They could find a gun. I certainly wouldn't want them to find that. They could find a knife or some other thing, or drugs, or a nudie magazine, right? I would hope they would find a nudie magazine, because it's not going to kill you. Sure, you might need a little biology, an anatomy lesson, and see some people engaging in the sexual act. But that's a human thing. So, I'd much rather them find that. And that's what I found when I was a young boy going through my dad's drawers. At the bottom drawer, I pulled it out, and there were these Playboy magazines. Call it good, bad, whatever. That's just, and I'm not the only one who's done that in their lives. Boys, at one point or another, boys, young girls, because it's in them genetically.
It's in them genetically, and there's a curiosity. There's a
wonder,
isn't there? If anything,
absolutely. So for a group, religious or whatever, or something, governing bodies or whatever, to shame you into the saying, no, if you're the human being and you want to engage in these sexual behaviors and whatnots and such, and it's dirty and lustful and all those things, that's a form of control and fear.
So at this point then, Tommy, what's your hopes for the future? How do you hope the industry will change or continue to change? How do you hope that things look as we move forward?
Well, I don't think there is an industry anymore.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, years ago, in its infancy in the 60s and the 70s, or the early 70s, 80s, they shot loops. And these loops were basically two people engaged in a sexual moment, you know. Then eventually that subject matter, if you will, was put into a film movie format where they had acting and storyline and whatnot, and then in the story, in context with the story, a sex scene would happen and develop and whatnot. And through the evolution, eventually people thought, nobody cares about the dialogue, they just want to see the activity, the action. That's what we're here to see. And then there was this moment where it went from film, physical film, to digital. And then these cameras are so readily available that anybody could pick up a camera and shoot two people engaging in this sexual activity. This minus the dialogue and the acting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the internet came into play and changed the entire game to where, you know, much like music was affected by Napster, where people could upload music and share it amongst each other for free, and now you got that song or music for free, you don't have to pay for it. That was a big milestone in digital and internet and all those things from a music standpoint. Then eventually that's what happened to the adult industry, the adult subject matter, you know, adult content was the same thing that took place. The internet did those things, and now here we are now, when there was once upon a time maybe 200 actors and actresses worldwide who were actual porn actors.
Mm-hmm.
Now the whole world is able to be one and just produce adult content in so many different niches and genres and ways that there is no porn industry anymore, so to speak. It's a free-for-all. Anyone can do it from the privacy of their own home.
And is that a good thing or a bad?
And this is this right here is this is what should be noted as problematic, because this gives anyone, whether you're a child or whatever, or human, adult, whatever, access to everything, even as a young person, to decide, oh, I'm going to just take pictures of myself in a naked subsexual manner and upload it to my own place and whatnot. So it's just, the internet's been helpful in some capacity and hurtful in other capacities. And now we're seeing it from a movie standpoint, you know, just Hollywood movies and stuff. Now with AI fast approaching, if not already here, or if not too late already, for its effects and what it's having on the planet, AI, there won't even be a need for actors or people to make music or write books, or everything will be AI generated.
I have a hope that that's on the consumption level, that there might not be a need for actors, for performers, for a moment. But I think us as human beings, we want to perform. We want
to
be
watch
artists.
humans doing it, of course.
Yeah, we want to be creative, and I don't think that I, for one, can't see a moment where I would want to watch computer generated AI porn. I don't see any interest in that. Do you see there being an interest in it, or you're more in the industry in the know than I am? Is there a need for that?
Well, it's not going to be a need. It's not going to be a need. It's going to be an interest, because as humans, our curiosity is going to be like, oh, in that world of AI, you can do stuff that's not human, so to speak. You could accentuate body parts. You can make a human into a creature. You could do, you could have a creature with a human. You could, things that would never take place in real life.
Or I guess people that wouldn't take part in real life.
Yeah, you could take the image of, Brad Pitt and whoever. Or, you could get someone and have them engage in the sexual act that would never happen in reality. Even in a movie or whatever capacity, they're talking about actors and nobody's going to ever be subjected to a harmful situation in a movie like a stuntman. We don't need a stuntman anymore, or we may not.
What do we do as human beings then that have this need and desire to create and
to be creative?
To be creative. What do we do then?
Well, we just might end up reverting into a more of a place where we will be creative, but just not as much. Or maybe that goes underground and they're like, "Ooh, I got some real human porn. You want to see it?" Versus AI shit, right? You know what I mean? So I'm making this. Yeah, so maybe one day it'll be underground. Like, dude, where do you see this? I actually got human pornography. It's between real people. Oh my God, no way, really?
So then, Tommy, this brings me to my final question that I'm asking all of my guests at the moment, and it's quite a big one then. So if our outlook on the future, the way that we're describing it at the moment with AI and technology, it can look quite bleak, and we've spoken a lot about the light that you're trying to shine on the industry and there is a dark side to the industry as well. And I wonder then, my big question that might not even have an answer, how would you make this a better world?
Well, that's first of all, as long as greed and money and the quest for control over the masses of people exists, that's going to be extremely difficult. What I just encourage is each individual themselves take responsibility for just spread kindness and love and joy and encouragement and whatnot to your fellow man, one person at a time. I feel like our technology has surpassed our humanity. I don't, as long as, you got 10 people in a room, what drives that one person in that room to want to control the rest of those people? Power, struggle, versus just coexist with each other as a unit and develop a utopian type of world, which is entirely possible, I think. But as long as we have religious beliefs, differences, and that stems back thousands of millions of years or however from beliefs and stuff. It's still one of the biggest reasons humans kill each other off is their religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me like a shift moving from that power and control into kindness. Again,
the choice we all have to make. Who runs the world? Who's running the world? No. It's between governments, pharmaceuticals, all these things. It's just medical health care and all those things. It's like, it's still hard to believe that in this year 2026 we're going into. That sounds like the future to me. It's like, wow, we still got places in the world that don't have drinking water, good drinking water or medical or whatever. I feel like as if you're a human on this planet, you should be privy and benefit from another human's ability to save your life from a medical health standpoint and not being knowledgeable. It should just be by virtue of birthright, right? It blows my mind that there's such a vast space between the rich and the poor. And it's just all that money goes up here.
Well, in recent years, the divide
1%.
has been the divide has
Yeah,
become wider and wider, hasn't it, between the rich and the poor?
yeah, it's just unbelievable. 1% of the world population owns 90% of the money, or whatever. There's been extinction events before where there's been huge civilizations that, and we see the we see the ruins of them, right? What was their demise? What was it that toppled those civilizations?
Mm.
What was it?
Like I say, we're at a pivot point. We're at a moment here. I think across the planet that it could go one way or the other. And from my conversations that I'm having, and this conversation that I'm having with you, you're someone that strives for kindness. And I think there are more of us out there that are trying to do so, that are trying to make that pivot from dark to light and go into the light. And I know whilst it's easy for us to look at the darkness, because there is some dark things happening out there, that we can really change the tone of the conversation, and make a difference here. I believe, Tommy, and you're doing that with your fans only documentary. So as we wrap up this conversation, is there a fans only free on the way? Is there? Are you in the process of talking about what's next?
Fans only 3 will be not for a spoiler alert or anything, but it'll kind of revert back to a little more of my past and some of the things that I've been through. As you know, my book's has been out since October. Mm-hmm. Myself and Jim Steele, with the help of Jim, I released my first book titled Unloaded, Tommy Gunn's Unloaded. And it's just my life growing up as a child and how I was raised and the courses of events that led me to where I'm at today, present day, and some of the amazing things that took place and some of the amazing people that I met and some of the darkness and some of the moments that I thought that was it. Only to discover, no, it's not. So that's also on Amazon if one wants to try to find that. And again, we're only on this planet for however long. It's not a very long time. So, if anything, try to give encouragement, love, kindness, even just financial help, as much as however you can help somebody do something, whatever, be more of a positive force in the world, even if it's just one, because one grain of sand is only one, but a huge, amount of sand is, the earth, how many grains of sand are on the earth? It's so many, right? So collectively, I think they all add up and make more of a difference. Little steps are key, and just, as often as you could be kind and encouraging and uplifting and whatnot, and kind to yourself at the end of the day still too, even more, and forgive yourself. And, this is all our first time. I don't ever think I may have had a past life, whatever, but I don't remember it. So I think this is my first go around. I've never been me before, so I'm still trying to figure it out and say, oh, so this is how this works. I'll be 59 in May, which just blows me away because I never thought I'd make it this far, of some of the silly things I've done and some of the unfortunate choices I made. But, you learn from all those things, hopefully, right? And you can take that and apply it to the upcoming years. Hopefully there are many. But, I got more time behind me than I have ahead of me. So we'll just have to see.
Well, it sounds to me like, Tommy, on this journey that you've had in life, that you've really discovered a lot about yourself. You've discovered a lot about the people around you as well. If you could if you could jump in a time machine right now and go back to that moment where you was etching your name into that bullet, what advice would you have for yourself at that moment?
I would say that obviously you're feeling these these dark thoughts and these moments and stuff, but you can do it. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna the hardest part again is, we struggle more in our minds than we do in reality. It's the most thing, and like it's kind of in our minds. Like I said, our brains, just out of evolution and instinctually, we look for something that's wrong in order to keep us from being killed from it, a threat or whatever. So you're always on this heightened sense of alert. I would just, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, it seems like any time nowadays, you go on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, everyone's got this positive this and manifest this and think this way, and all these whatevers. And what do I take from all those things? It's hard to kind of sort and pick, choose what's something that could be, or effective way of, I think at the end of the day, really, is just, again, we have that choice to react to something, and it's just trying to think positive is the hardest part, because sometimes you feel delusional, like, oh man, I want to accomplish this, and it just seems so outlandish and unachievable, and it's just so whatever. And someone says, well, it's gotta scare you, these dreams, because that's a hard thing to kind of, I still may not know what I would say to myself back then. I'd pick myself up, I'd toss those things in the garbage, and I'd throw my arm around that person and say, wait till you see what's in the future coming for you. All these things that are great. You just gotta get through these dark moments, and think highly, or more, believe in yourself more, And it's hard to believe in yourself. It's hard to believe in yourself, because fuck, it's so hard.
Yeah, because life is hard. Even when we're in the light, it's a challenge every day. There's something new coming for us every day, and there's even moments that are not within our world, in the outside world, that are so dark and horrible that they hit us. Just like the events that are happening in Australia.
In Australia, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's horrible, and it hits you, but like you say, you got to keep moving forward, and you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other in order to make a difference in your life, and to make a difference in the lives of others. And so, just I did say that was a final question, Tommy, but you did touch on one thing there that you mentioned at the very beginning, when we said hello. You're looking to pursue your dreams. What is the dream then? What is the dream to you? What does that look like?
Well, that's a tough one. I want it to be without worry, concern about financial stuff and health issues. But, again, I'd love to be able to be in a position where I was blessed with prosperity, so I could only just share it, because money rots in your pocket, and it only shines when you share it with people. So I hope that I love being creative. I love the movie business. I love telling stories. I'd love to make movies, make people cry, be hopeful, be sad, be uplifted, be encouraged, be all these things in a cinema setting, in a real actual theater. I love that. I've always loved that. So it's always been something that I felt tremendously excited by. So I'd like to do some acting, only to explore stuff outside of my own self. I like those challenges, and working on roles and delivering lines, and just exploring that. I love the whole camaraderie in the movie business, and the whole team of people making this project. Just more of anything to just affect people, to enlighten people, encourage people, and uplift them, and try to make them see that there's more, and there is something to believe in, and be hopeful for, something on the horizon. So, at the moment, I worry about a few things. Just naturally, my father's getting older. He's not as sharp as he once was from a mental standpoint, and now I'm witnessing that, and I know that that's inevitable. It's a day coming that I'm going to have to deal with. I don't know how I'm going to do that. And then I got my own mortality that frightens the shit out of me there, because every time I turn around, this guy passed away, or this woman dropped dead, or this guy, or just the stuff going on like we mentioned in Australia, or those types of things. Mm-hmm. It's just as daunting as it is, it's hard to be, it's hard to be, so
consistently, even when we're finding solutions, even when we're trying to strive for the good, it's hard to be consistently positive. I think of myself as someone that is trying to be positive, that is trying to have a better life, and that we're in the correct space most of the time. But there are wobbles, there are struggles, and that, some of these things that we're talking about, I don't think that we're, as human beings, I don't think that we're ever going to find the answers to some of them.
Yeah, unfortunate.
But let's keep trying. And I guess that's a little bit what I'm trying to do here, is in having these conversations, trying to find a better way forward. And I really do appreciate you sharing, Tommy.
Oh, absolutely.
Really it has been a wonderful conversation. Now, where do we find, first of all, Fans Only and Fans Only 2? Where is the movie streaming?
Well, you could go physically to watchfansonly.com. Also, it's on Amazon, and then YouTube, Apple TV, Vimeo. Yeah.
And you also mentioned you've got a book out right now.
I do. It's currently.
Where's the book available?
That's on Amazon Prime. You can look that up. Tommy Gunn's Unloaded, and it'll pop up, and there's a soft and hardcover. So, yeah.
Great. Wonderful.
And if I could, in closing, my biggest thing would be to help someone. Not one person, constantly help people. If you can help some, open the door, share a smile, give a few bucks, help somebody put their sofa in the back of their pickup truck, drive somebody over here to do stuff. We're all so worried about people being scammers and that's, there's a reason to worry about that, because obviously nobody wants to be taken advantage of or used or those things. But when the time calls and you got the good judgment and whatnot, help somebody. Give them a kind word. Compliment them on how they look. I like your this, or you did that, or good job. Praise. That's what's going to get us beyond what we're all dealing with right now in the world. These ugly things. It's just help somebody in any way you can. And don't be some rich person with all this, and you're not helping nobody, because, like I said, money rots in your pocket, and it only shines when you share it with people and help people and do these things. And if you're in abundance and you have you can't take it with you. So do something, and that's where I want to get to, a point where I could do just some more bigger things, more powerful, more influential things. So that's about it.
Wonderful. What a beautiful note to wrap this up on, Tommy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, we'll see it.
Thank you. And if anyone has been watching or listening to this conversation, we appreciate you for joining us. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.